Your home can be more than just a home. It can be your own personal fitness retreat, a place where you break a sweat, break your personal record, or just get a break in the day. Johnson Fitness and Wellness is your partner in creating the perfect home gym. And now, enjoy up to 50% off top-rated treadmills, ellipticals starting at $5.99, and major discounts on strength equipment. Visit a local store or johnsonfitness.com. Your home gym is just a few steps away.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. You are listening to Sunday Talks with Kellie and Lisa. I am the Kellie portion of that title.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa. Good morning.
Today, this is the first of the year, and most people are talking about resolutions and goals and all that stuff. And we thought that we'd take a step back from that and help you figure out why maybe that has never worked for you in the past. If you're one of those people who have set goals or resolutions or whatever again and again and again, and you never seem to quite get where you want to be, been there, done that. What I've learned through the years and what Lisa and I have talked about is when you're having trouble reaching goals, it may not be your goal-setting skills that is the issue, but your self-esteem, your self-confidence, your belief in yourself, all of that stuff. It all comes back to you. So what we thought we would do is give you some tips and tools and talk a little bit about how you start. This show is all about what you should do and how you should be thinking before you start setting goals. There's a whole lot more to setting goals than what you've been led to believe. What do you think about that, Lisa?
I love this show, and I absolutely love this topic. I am a participant in a 12-week mastermind right now about goals and just having a more productive quarter, if you will. And so this really falls right in line with what I'm doing on a personal level. So I'm glad that we get to bring that to listeners to help them really just have a powerful 2022. And I personally, even though 2021 was a doozy, I still think I had a lot of good things come up in 2021. So I'm really taking stock in that. But I just want to say that goals are fabulous. It's really good to have that point B to help you get from point A to look at that point B. But when a lot of people set goals, they don't know what they want. They don't know where they want to go. It's something more along the lines of, I want to lose 20 pounds this year. That's fabulous. That's absolutely a fabulous goal. But it's not deep enough, and that's the end point. So I know we've talked before about like that big picture, and that goal is your big picture, but you still have to paint all those little numbers to get to that big picture. So what is deeper diving into those goals, not just why what you want to do, but why you want to do that. What does it mean to you? It's more than just that surface of, I want to lose 20 pounds. And I think we're going to dive into that today.
Right. And you have to know yourself and love yourself before you can even begin to figure out what you want. A lot of times we say things like, I want to lose 20 pounds, because society tells us you should lose some weight. That doesn't make it matter to us. People say, I want to excel in my career. I want to make more money. Do you really? Or is that what society is telling you should want? Look at goals in a way of who are you? Maybe your first goal should be figuring out who you are. You know, we have been so conditioned in the United States anyway to, you know, be bigger, stronger, faster, prettier, smarter, whatever. And none of that has anything to do with who we are as individuals. How many people do you know that seemingly have, from the outside looking in, a perfect life, and yet because you know them, you know they're miserable? You know, I know people that live in pursuit of the almighty dollar, not so they can do anything with it. Society has told them that if you have enough money, eventually you'll be happy. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to accumulate as much stuff as possible because society has said, he who dies with the most toys wins. And what a horribly shallow way to treat ourselves. You know, personally, I went from got to work more, money. I actually, when I was doing real estate, showed property on Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, New Year's, Easter. I had no weekends or no holidays because I was so focused on selling real estate. And, yeah, I accumulated quite a bit of money during those years. And honestly, that money I accumulated then got me through some really tough years. But it didn't make me happy. You know, people would congratulations for selling so much and getting that award. I didn't care. That award meant nothing to me. In fact, honestly, I don't know where any of those awards or certificates are. I didn't keep them. And that was kind of my wake-up call, was somebody asked me, hey, what'd you do with that award that you got? Oh, you know what? I think I threw it away. Why? Weren't you proud of that? No, I was not. It didn't make me happy. It was not fulfilling. All it was money. And then I had to take a step back. What really matters to me? What matters to me is the love of my friends and family, my animals and being able to take care of them, my property, being able to garden. Those things matter to me. Selling some investor their 17th property, that doesn't matter to me. So when I took a really hard look at myself and my life, and I recommend everyone do it, it is not pleasant. It is not a joyful thing to call yourself out when you're trying to get to the bottom of why are you overwhelmed? Why are you stressed? Most of the time, it's because of pressure we've put on ourselves. Now, if you've had something happen in your life, yeah, you have every reason to feel temporarily overwhelmed and stressed out. If you have gone through something big to you, doesn't matter if it's big to anyone else, if something that you went through traumatized you or added pressure on you, I am never going to tell you how you should feel. You feel how you feel, and you're entitled to that. But barring that, if everything's going along in your life and nothing's really happening, good or bad, maybe it's time to ask yourself some questions. Start with this. Am I happy? Be honest. Are you happy? Because if you can't jump up out of your heart center and say, yes, I am happy with everything you've got, then you may need to look at that and figure out, what do you need to be happier? Not what does some book say you should do. What does your friends say you should do? What does society say you should do? Go inside yourself and really ask yourself, what do I need right now? and figure out how to get it. You know, I saw someone with their young child and in a grocery store, and he was throwing a temper tantrum because she didn't get whatever it was that he wanted. So by this point, she's drug him through the store, and they're now in the middle of the produce section, which normally is the only place in that grocery store I go to. So I'm watching this, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 year old boy throwing himself on the floor, kicking, screaming, you know, and she is just ignoring him completely. And finally, she got to the point where she realized she had to do something or he wasn't going to stop. And she sat in front of him and she said, "What do you need right now?" And he stopped for a minute like he was trying to understand what in the world she just asked him. And she said, "No, really, what do you need right now?" And he said, "A peanut butter sandwich." And everyone standing around there laughed at that point because the simple mind of a child, what do I need right now? Oh, I'm hungry. I want a peanut butter sandwich. And one of the produce people who had been stocking the produce went in the back, and he came back with a peanut butter sandwich. And, you know, they were just kind of stunned. But that kid needed that. That's what made him okay. Now, I'm not saying you need to eat. I'm not saying you need a peanut butter sandwich or you need to run a 10K or whatever it is that is popular these days. I'm saying you need to, whatever it is, you need to ask yourself and answer that question. People ask me all the time, how do I know? How do I ask questions? How do I hear that answer? And honestly, it's a little bit different for everyone, but you need to shut up. You need to stop talking. You need to stop thinking. You need to turn off the TV, the stereo, the phone, whatever it is you're hooked into. Sit quietly for a few minutes. Take 3 really deep breaths. And ask yourself, what do I need? If you've been sad, you can ask, what would make me happy right now? If you're stressed out, what do I need to relieve the stress right now? And then be quiet and you'll get your answer. A lot of people feel it in their heart center. Some people get a tingling when they know that is the answer from their higher self. Some people say they don't get an answer right away, but they may have a dream about the answer. Or some random thing may happen. They'll see something on TV, or they'll be driving and they see a sign, or they hear something on the radio that gives them their answer. But what you need to know is if you are open to receiving your answer, you're going to get it. Now, that doesn't mean those people, and I know they're out there, I've seen them, who walk around grumpy and, you know, nothing ever works out. What do I need to do to make me feel better? I need things to work out. That's not what I'm talking about, because that is a self-defeating thing. You don't want to do that. You really want to settle. If you need to cry, cry first. If you feel like you need to take a walk first, take a walk first. Honestly, walking might be a really good way to get your answer. But you need to be centered inside yourself and not listening to anything from the outside. And ask yourself, what do I need? When I was doing a lot of coaching, I had someone tell me that we were sitting face to face, and I asked her, ask yourself, what do you need right now? And she burst into tears and said, love. I need someone to love me. And if you are in that darkness right now, know you can get out. And you do have someone who loves you. Hopefully, you love yourself. And that's where it has to start. before you start setting goals about making money, buying a car, getting a new house, whatever it is, make that first goal to love yourself more. What do you think, Lisa?
I think I need you to keep going.
Yeah.
You were doing such a great job. Wow, that's deep. I don't like saying so much. I apologize. So we talked offline about the difference between self-love, self-care, and self-soothing. Some people get into ambition and that drive, and that sounds like that may have been something that happened to you. I'm just assuming here on this one, with the constantly working and constantly acquiring, these deals and closings and, the money. So that is a distraction, just like alcohol, drugs, sex addiction, all of that. And it sounded like maybe we need to touch on that as well, because it is hard to sit down and be quiet with yourself. The work is hard. It's just, oh my gosh, it's like crawling through quicksand. But it's beautiful. It's a beautiful journey while you're, digging through those trenches, trying to heal that child that's having that temper tantrum. And that was actually another thing I wanted to talk about. So we have three different things that I wanted to hit on. That child in the grocery store that was, I just need a peanut butter sandwich. That is a beautiful analogy to our inner child screaming at us, and the things that we're facing: stress, burnout, fatigue, emotional comfort in food, lack of energy, lack of libido. All of these different things can be a way, or it could be our inner child throwing a temper tantrum, just like that child in the middle of the grocery store. And these things that we're experiencing, particularly physically, is our body letting us know, hey, something is not right. I'm throwing a temper tantrum at you. You need to stop and listen. For those of us who are listening who have a hard time stopping and listening, as Kellie pointed out, you might not get it just sitting still. You might not get it the first time. You might have a dream about it. You might start seeing a lot of synchronous, like when you think about a red car, all of a sudden there's 100 red cars on the road. You might start getting your answer in all these other ways. What was the best way for you? I know for me, I like to just overanalyze and be in my head and be in my head and be in my head. So when I stop and I write, even if it's just a little simple journal entry, even on my phone, in my quick notes section, you have the memos on your phone or whatnot, just typing something out, or I like to scream. It's a great therapy, and it does help silence some things, but just to be able to reel myself back in, ground myself. That's something that when I'm in my head a lot, I need to find that grounding, and that to me just also means that relaxation point where I'm not so hyper-focused on whatever it is that has presented itself. I've recently have started having some anxiety about, not anxiety, just I guess maybe it is anxiety, something that happened several years ago. And as I'm going through my healing journey, and when I was helping others with a certain situation, I did some speaking at a college that had experienced something very tragic within their ranks. And recently I have started to obsess over how I handled that situation and what I may have done differently, even though I can't go back and fix it, that might have impacted some people in a traumatic way that at that time I just didn't make all those connections to all those dots. So for me to move past that and allow myself to forgive myself, to give myself grace. It's something that I know I have to play over and over in my head, but I don't need it to take up so much space that I'm not moving forward with other things. So part of that is saying silent apologies to people who I have no idea who was in that room when we were going through this healing session with these students. I don't know who was there, and there's no way I could track these people down to find out how they're doing now. So it's one of those situations where I'm just very limited on what I can do, and I have since grown, and I have also become more professional, more mature. My own healing is taking, just this huge journey of my own healing, and the impact that my own healing has on me to allow me the insight to know that if I ever am in that situation again, these are the things that I shouldn't do. So, yeah, I've been writing about that a lot. I have no idea why that came up. I don't know why I just shared that with everybody, but
that's okay. I think you touched on a couple of really good points there. It is, like I said, a really individual thing, and so many of us are always in our heads, and we think too much, and it's just a revolving door of thought. And in Buddhist mindset, they call that the monkey mind, because it's bouncing all over. And it's the more you try to control it, the worse it gets. And one of the big things that trips people up is exactly that. One of the things that I've tried, I say try because class is still ongoing, to teach some young people that I've been working with is to just observe the thought. You are not your thought. And I know people always argue that point with me. But you are different than the brain who never turns off. So if you can learn to take a step back, and when you're trying to think of anything, or even when you're trying to clear your mind, when you're trying to be calm and still, and those thoughts keep bouncing, make it fun for you. Oh, look, there's that thought again, going around and around and around. And maybe picture a wheel going around and around and around out the other. You just have to look at them. Yep, that's still bothering me. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that was, and look at each thought as it pops up. Give it acknowledgement, and then let it go. Don't go down that rabbit hole. When you start just observing what you're thinking, you realize, first off, I realized how little I thought. Because when you're thinking the same things over and over and over again, that's taking up all your thinking space. So you need to clear some of that out so that you can relax. When you're always in your head, you're never going to be able to manifest anything because you are not grounded. When you're in your head, you're sort of kind of leak out of your body. You're not grounded. In order to be a good manifestor, you must be grounded. One of the good ways that I know of to do that is go for a walk, or just go outside and stand in the sun or sit on a bench. Go outside, move a little bit. If you're at work, stand up from your chair and maybe shake your hands out, because that reconnects us with our bodies, and it is very grounding. Movement is very grounding. And maybe start there. And if you are in a dark space right now, and let your first thought be, you know what, when I start getting really, really upset, maybe I'll stand up and walk around the room. And when you do that, congratulate yourself. That is step one in rebuilding you. I really think our society has done a lot of bad things to us. Our schools have overwhelmingly, been a large disservice to children, because if they don't fit in that box, well, that's not going to be a good kid. And we've done shows about how inaccurate that is. But disconnect. A few years ago, I was having a really tough time sleeping. I still have those nights, but back then it was every night. I was getting by probably for a year and a half, 2 years, on less than 5 hours of sleep a night. And it was not working out for me. I am not one of those people who can do that. I require sleep, preferably 8 hours. But what I came to realize is that why I wasn't going to sleep was because I couldn't turn my brain off. And I wasn't turning my brain off because I would rather ignore it than look at the issues I was contemplating subconsciously. And once I stopped and took a look at what was really the core of bothering me, it was time to make some huge changes, and I did. But sometimes it's not pretty to look at. You know, sometimes when you are trying to find yourself again, and I say again because we were all ourselves when we were born. And somewhere along the line, whether you were traumatized or whether you had an accident or an illness or lost someone you loved, any multitude of things could have happened to you. But you're probably not who you were supposed to be. And we all go through lessons and we all go through things that make us grow. That's what life is. Life is growing. But if you're getting to a point where you can't find your way out of the funk you're in, or you've determined that light at the end of the tunnel is an oncoming train, don't give up. Please don't give up. I've been there. It was not pretty. And these days it is still not pretty to look at for me. But only by looking at our darkness can we find our light. And there's another show that I do that goes into that more in depth. But wherever you are is the perfect place for you to start. However you feel about yourself right now is the perfect place for you to start. Perfect way for you to feel. If you look in the mirror and don't like what you see, do you not like what you see because you're looking at yourself through society's eyes? Because that's a huge possibility. If you look into a mirror and you say, I'm not successful, I'm not thin enough, I'm not tan enough, or I'm not white enough, or I'm not whatever enough, that's society condemning you. Don't let it. Don't let it. Look in the mirror and find 3 things that you like about what you see. One of your things can be, I like that I'm trying to be courageous enough to grow. You know, wherever you are is where you're supposed to be. But do not let society force you to make goals or whatever it is that society is making you do. Work too much, that's a big one here. You know, don't let it. Take some time before you start down the I'm going to make $1 million this year. Before you start trying to manifest, take that time, put in that work on yourself so that you can actually manifest what you want instead of more of what you don't want. If you are wallowed down in worry, if you are, I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills, I don't know how I'm going to buy a car, I don't know how I'm going to, whatever it is, you're not helping yourself. You're hurting yourself. Just stop. If the biggest thing you get out of this show is you stop that, we've been successful. You have to, I'll say it all the time, start where you are, but you have to like where you are. You have to like yourself. Maybe not where you are. If you're in a bad place, I don't want you to like it there. But like yourself enough to start making baby steps out of it. Because when you try to set goals and you're reading books on manifesting and you get really discouraged with everything because it didn't work for you, you've done yourself a disservice. You cannot build a mansion on a sand dune. You have to start with a good base. And what this show, this episode today is all about is helping you build a good, solid base. You have to have something to build from. And it has to start with you. You know, tell yourself you can do it. Even if you don't believe it, even if you think you're lying to yourself, you've been lying to yourself this far, what's another couple days? Tell yourself, I can do this. Because you were lying to yourself when society told you what size of clothes you need to wear. And you were lying to yourself when you believed whatever commercial that sold you whatever product you really couldn't afford. And you were lying to yourself every time you say, I'm not good enough. So let's start there, doing that. It is a process. Manifesting in particular, and we've done, I don't know how many shows I've done about manifesting. But I'm telling you, this is why it's not working for you. Because you're building castles in the clouds. You're building a mansion on the beach. Let's start laying the groundwork. You know, stick with us here. This is a series. Stick with us. Let us help you build that groundwork that you need so that you can set those goals that you attain, so that you can manifest all that wonderful stuff you want. Start with you. Give yourself this gift of laying your foundation. So many adults today never had a foundation. Let us help you build a foundation. Anything to add, Lisa?
Well, I would like to, that was beautiful first, thank you. Thank you for all of that. As far as coming back around to the goals and the goal setting, I think an important thing to remember is that you have to untrain yourself. Like you said, just at the end there are things that you need to, that you're going to have to untrain in order to achieve those goals. I read recently that some studies, I cannot quote the study, so that motivation is not what gets people moving. The feeling good once they start doing it becomes the motivation or the basis of that motivation. Finding motivation is fabulous, but you're going to have to work on untraining yourself for a lot. Untrain is no word. The habits that you formed, the ways that you work, your routines, all of that are going to have to be unlearned, and you're, retraining yourself to now incorporate this other thing to get you to that goal has to be done, and it's difficult, but a lot of times people, we talked about this at the beginning of the show, focus on that big picture, that big goal. Some of those things you're not going to get done in a year. Some of them are going to take a little bit longer. So knowing if your goal is really more of a do this in a year, or is it going to take me 5 years? Is this something a little bit even further long term? And I'm not saying to put those barriers in your way. There's just sometimes there's some physical aspects of your goals that I don't know if we're actually in this realm able to overcome. I don't know if you can lose 300 pounds in a year. I'm not saying yes or no. I'm not a medical professional, and I don't want to put like those barriers of limitations out there, but there are just some things as much as I want to manifest all of the things, I still come back to some reality. Oh my goodness, I just stumbled on my words. Some of the realization of there are some limitations that I just know I'm going to experience, and, working on unlearning those and then breaking those goals down in chunks. I know we're going to do a whole series on this because it is important, but for me, my goal foundation starts with my word of the year. I pick a word that I like to focus on and incorporate that word into my daily practices. And let's use the word practices instead of rituals and habits. Routines, practices, to me sounds a lot more flexible, like I can change those if they're not working out. But with habits or rituals, it sounds a little bit more permanent and something that's very daunting to overcome. So semantics to me is also very important. But my word of the year right now, or I guess my word of right now, is intention. That is based in discipline. For me, a lot of my problem with achieving my goals is I am not disciplined to stick with anything. I am the epitome of shiny object syndrome, ADHD. I am all over the place. Something comes along, I'm like, oh, let me go try that. Something else comes along, I'm like, oh, let me try that. And I haven't finished the other thing that I wanted to try. I am the epitome of that, and I work very hard to overcome that defect in my personality. I don't know if it's really a defect, but trying to overcome that. Thank you for that. My focus is intention. What is my intention when something takes my attention? What is intention of focusing or shifting now my focus on that particular thing? Is it as a crutch? Is it something that makes me go into avoidance mode? Is it, what is the reason that I am now shifting to that? And is it in my best intention for me to even focus on something along those lines? And then to have the discipline to bring myself to the awareness of looking at these things that are taking my attention. And why am I allowing my attention to be diverted? Is it out of boredom? Is it because I have a fear that I'm not good enough, or that I will be successful, because that's a solid fear too? Like, there's all these different things that can come along with why I'm allowing something to take my attention. And is this something that I'm supposed to even engage in to get a lesson, or to say, can I look at that situation and say, nope, I learned my lesson, I'm going to, focus on what I'm still focusing on. I don't need this in my life. So that's something for me, is sitting down with myself and reflecting on 2021 and the goals that I had for 2021. Now, granted, I know that there was an entire world shutdown and then reopening in 2021, but more so along the lines, 2020 was that way too, but there are still things we can accomplish even with all of those outside influences happening. So what was it that hindered me, or that kept me from moving forward with my goals that I had last year? And, reflecting on that and really evaluating what was it that I allowed to get in my way other than myself. Like, why did I allow myself to get in my way of not achieving some of those goals? Were they realistically too big for a year to actually put in the box of a calendar January to December year? Is it something that, I need to work on more healing in order to move forward? I'm coming up on 2 years of sobriety, and lately I've started to pay more attention to the tightening of my pants, and I know that I gave up one crutch for another, and now I have to sit down and I have to deal with that now. I have to focus on my health and my wellness from a completely different perspective of just needing to lose 20 pounds. I really need to focus in on, why do I have this extra weight? What is it from 2021 that I didn't do? What distractions, what avoidances did I allow to come into my life? And food was one of them. When you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, which you don't have to, by the way, you can put that down. There's a lot of other things that come along with that. So with all of that being said, reflection is really important to lay the foundation that you were talking about. You can't build a castle in the sand. You have to, have that support, that foundation, evaluating and looking at. Don't look at them as failures, just look at them as, now this is the next step to achieving that goal. That was, 2021 was its own step. Now there's these steps. And for me, the word of the year or the word of the moment, I'm actually doing word of the quarter. I'm focusing on 12 weeks, and then I'm focusing on another 12 weeks. I'm breaking my goals down in chunks throughout the year this year. I want to try this approach instead. My resolutions or my intentions list is beautiful, it's colorful, and it's fun because I tend to think I'm a beautiful, colorful, fun person. So I have my list, I have my desires written down in a more the way that fits my personality. I am not an Excel spreadsheet kind of girl when it comes to my personal stuff. Work is a completely different story, but that is something that I have, and reflection and picking something to focus on that you can recall right away when you notice that you're diverting from the solutions to get to the goals. And I know eventually we're going to talk about like the steps that you have to take to reach those goals and being disciplined and having some sort of structure in your day and your plan to make sure that you're moving forward.
Yes and no. Everyone is different, and believe it or not, some of those things that look like a lack of discipline, where someone goes from one project to another, that works for them. So, society says that discipline is sitting down and doing your entire, we'll say you're in high school, book report in one sitting. Genius people work an entirely different way usually. Differently abled people, totally different discipline. Discipline for those people looks like, I'm going to focus with everything I've got, my full attention on this for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, but then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to focus on this for 10 minutes. And that's a more realistic way of being disciplined to a lot of people. Sometimes you can't. I had a counselor one time that told me that she had also grown up on a farm, and she said, I call that the farmer thinking, because if you're working on a farm, you're doing 74 things at the same time usually. You've got different animals going on, you've got different things going on, you've got to go over here, and then you've got to go check that. And they can be perfectly disciplined without fighting themselves. And I think sometimes that is something we need to look at. Most of you know I did a stint as a therapist and hated every moment of it, honestly. But I don't know why my computer is going weird. Anyway, so you have to look at the individual. If you have, for example, a child that is differently abled, their discipline is going to look very, very different from some other child. If you have an adult that has been traumatized repeatedly, their discipline is going to look very, very different from someone else who has never experienced anything horrible to them. You have to consider that when you're evaluating yourself and what do you want and what works best for you. If what works best for you is you do better when you take a break every 15 minutes from whatever you're doing. Then do that. If you know that you are at your best when you sit down and fully concentrate on any one given thing for 2 hours, do that. But the key is you have to find what works for yourself. And you're not going to find what really works for yourself unless you try a couple of different things. Don't get stuck in, it has to look one way. There are many, many, many different ways for the same thing to work for different people. So, maybe when we're going through, and really somebody just asked me a question in the chat that you have to know what works for you. And this person says, how do I begin? And what I find is through the years when I've been coaching people or working with groups, I can tell them, sit calmly, quiet your mind, disconnect from all electronic things, and they don't know how to start. And I can say, well, maybe they didn't hear what I said, or maybe they're just trying to complicate it. But no, really the simplest answer is the answer. They honestly do not know where to start. If you're at work and you're finding you're having an anxiety attack and you need to focus on different things, they 5 things, pick 5 different things around you, and that'll help you start calming down. Take some deep breaths. Then they can figure out, okay, well, that's what I need to do. That's how I start. But when we're talking about working on ourselves at our deepest level, we can tell someone, meditate. We can tell someone, quiet your mind. We can tell someone, don't quiet your mind. There's many different ways that you can begin. But you have to find what works for you. If sitting down on a chair or a couch and disconnecting from electronics and noticing what you're thinking is not what works for you, try it outside. Many people focus better when they're moving. I call that moving meditation. You can quiet your mind that way too. Just don't stick headphones in your ears. Go outside and walk. But whatever you do, make sure you give it a chance. I've had people tell me, I can't do that. All right, you're right, you can't. Well, how do I start? Well, you just said you couldn't do it, so why? But give yourself a chance. So many people do not give themselves a chance. We don't even give ourselves the opportunity to sit with ourselves and figure out, what do we need? What do we need? Ask yourself, what do I need to feel? What do I need to feel healthy right now? Whatever it is you're trying to get to, ask yourself, what do you need? What is the first step I need to take? And people tell me all the time they don't hear their inner self. They don't have a higher self. I've had people swear to me, I don't have a higher self. Yeah, you do. You're blocking it out. Your higher self isn't talking to you because you've told them to be quiet, or you've ignored them for so long. They're still there, though. And when you talk about going from one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, sometimes that's avoidance. Sometimes that is just, I don't feel like doing this right now, so I won't. And that's okay. But be honest with yourself. That's the thing. So many of us go through our lives lying to ourselves. And you're not doing yourself any favors by doing that. So just be honest with yourself. Figure out who you are. Figure out what resonates with you and what doesn't. And whatever you find out that resonates or doesn't is what's right for you. So you have any final thoughts on today's show?
I just wanted to say towards the end, you hit the nail on the head. Where you start is by being honest with yourself. For me, my shiny object syndrome, my this to this to this to this to this is absolute avoidance of something that I need to deal with. Taking 5 rest days in a row where I barely cleaned my house. Like, certain things for me, I know what works for me at this point. But the fact is, being honest with yourself is where you start. Because if you can't be honest with yourself, there's nothing that you're going to be able to do to get to where you want to be until you actually look at yourself. And we're not talking deep dives here at this point. Just being honest with yourself is where you start.
Absolutely. I think that about does it for this week.
Yes.
Hopefully the show gave you what you needed. I know we've got several people listening who I am personally aware of, I know. And, there's some issues that a lot of people, not just people I know, everyone seems to be going through an issue right now. Hopefully something we said helped. And, there will be much more next week. So thank you so very much for listening. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.